Welcome back to Revenge Red. Today's story: a broke daughter sends one email that shatters her family's perfect lie. My name is Lauren, I'm 29, and 2 days before I blew up my entire family's illusion, my own mother looked me dead in the eye and called me broke. She said it loud enough for the whole table to hear, like it was a punchline, not her daughter's life. My brother leaned back in his chair, smirked, and added, "You'll always be a nobody. Some people just aren't built for real success, I guess." Everyone laughed. Plates clinked, glasses tapped, and there I was, apparently the joke, sitting across from people who didn't know the only reason their lights were on was because of the nobody they liked to mock. They didn't know the mortgage company emailed me, not them. They didn't know both car notes drafted from my account. They didn't know the credit cards in their names were actually tied to my income, my overtime, my sleepless shifts. "You should really learn how to manage your money, Lauren," my mom said, shaking her head like I was a child who lost her lunch money. I wanted to laugh. Manage my money? I had spreadsheets, auto-pay setups, and entire paychecks disappearing so they could post vacation photos and talk about working hard for what you have. I could have exposed everything right there, in front of the mashed potatoes and fake concern. Instead, I smiled, took a sip of water, and let them talk. Let them dig in. Let them underestimate me one more time. Because they had no idea that in 48 hours, I would send one email that would cancel their safety net, expose every lie, and force them to finally stand on their own 2 feet, or fall. Before I tell you what happened after that email, tell me in the comments, what time is it where you are right now, and which city or country are you watching from? I want to see how far this broke nobody story can travel. The morning after that dinner, I was back in my tiny 1-bedroom apartment, hundreds of miles away from their 3-bedroom dream house that I paid for. I threw my scrubs into the laundry basket, kicked off my shoes, and sank onto the couch. My body still ached from the 12-hour night shift in the ER, but it wasn't the physical exhaustion that broke me. It was replaying my mom's voice calling me broke while she sat in a kitchen I technically owned. I work as a trauma nurse in Houston. I pick up double shifts, holidays, weekends, whatever the hospital needs. I see people on the worst days of their lives, and then I go home and quietly keep my family afloat, like it's just another part of the job. It started 3 years ago after my dad's second heart scare. My mom called crying, saying they were behind on the mortgage, that they might lose the house, that it would kill my dad to move. I had just finished paying off my last credit card and promised myself I'd finally save for my own home. Instead, I let guilt win. I called the bank, refinanced the loan under my name with my income, and took over every payment just until they got back on their feet. They never did. They just got comfortable. After that came the car notes. "We just need something reliable to get to work." And the credit cards. "We'll pay you back as soon as we can." They never did that either. On paper, I looked irresponsible. A single woman with massive debt and no assets of her own. In reality, I was a one-woman bailout fund for people who bragged about how hard they worked for everything. Last night's comments were different, though. They weren't just ungrateful. They were cruel. And for the first time, instead of swallowing it, I felt something inside me click. Not rage. The rage had been there for a while. It was clarity. If I kept paying, nothing would change. Why would it? They got the lifestyle and the moral high ground. I got anxiety and broke jokes. I pulled my laptop onto my knees and opened my online banking. Line after line of auto payments to their life scrolled across the screen. Mortgage, insurance, utilities, student loans that weren't even mine. If your family mocked you for being broke while living off your overtime, would you still keep paying? I stared at the numbers and realized the truth. The only reason they could afford to look down on me was me. That's when the idea of that email stopped being a fantasy and became a plan. I didn't start with words. I started with receipts. Before I even opened a blank email, I opened my banking app and pulled up 3 years of statements, scrolling past endless lines of mortgage draft, auto finance, utility services, and credit card payments that never once had my name on the plastic, only on the responsibility. I exported everything into a spreadsheet, sat at my small kitchen table, and began building the story my family pretended didn't exist. Column A, date. Column B, company. Column C, amount. Column D, which family member benefited. The screen filled up fast, rows stacking on rows until I had to scroll just to see the beginning again. I added a final column, what I gave up that month. Rent raised at my place, but I still covered their car. Skipped a weekend trip with coworkers so my mom's credit card wouldn't max out. Took on an extra overnight shift instead of rest so the mortgage didn't bounce. By the time I typed the last entry, my eyes were burning and my neck ached, but seeing everything laid out like that stripped away any excuse I'd let them feed me. This wasn't helping out a little. This was a second household on the back of one exhausted nurse. At the bottom of the sheet, I hit AutoSum. The total number that popped up made my breath catch. I whispered it out loud, just to hear it. That amount could have been a down payment on my own condo. It could have been 6 months' emergency savings. It could have been the difference between grinding every weekend until my body broke and finally breathing. Instead, it was the price of keeping my parents in their fantasy that they were doing fine. I closed my eyes and flashed back to the first time my mom called about the house. Her voice had cracked through the speaker, shaky and wet with tears. "Lauren, baby, they're saying if we miss one more payment, they'll start foreclosure. I don't know what to do. Your father can't handle moving again. This house is all we have." I'd been standing in my old studio apartment then, surrounded by cheap furniture and secondhand kitchenware, looking at my own bank account and realizing I could barely cover my own bills, let alone theirs. But when she said, "If we lose the house, it will kill him," I caved. I told myself it would be temporary. 3 months tops. I refinanced, signed where they asked me to sign, took on the responsibility because you're young. You have time to recover. 3 months became 6. 6 became a year. A year became 3. And somewhere along the way, my mother went from sobbing about foreclosure to casually boasting about our house at family gatherings, conveniently skipping the part where her daughter was the one keeping it. That memory hardened something inside me. So when I opened my laptop and clicked into my work portal to schedule a call with the hospital's financial wellness counselor, I wasn't shaky anymore. I picked the earliest slot the next day and wrote in the notes, "Long-term family support, need exit plan that protects my credit." The counselor, a woman with a calm voice named Melissa, didn't sound shocked when I explained everything. "You'd be surprised how often this happens," she said. "Adult children taking on parental debt. Especially when there's guilt involved. You are not a bad daughter for wanting out." She walked me through the practical steps in a way that made the whole mess feel less like a moral failure and more like a problem to solve. Turn off auto payments in a staggered way so due dates don't blindside my own accounts. Notify the creditors that correspondence should go only to the primary account holders. Put everything I'm changing in writing and give a clear end date to avoid being dragged into "I didn't know" and "you didn't tell us." "And emotionally?" I asked, my voice smaller. "Emotionally," she said, "you need to accept that they will call you selfish, ungrateful, cruel. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries rarely applaud when you set them. But at some point, you have to decide if you're going to live as their hero or as your own human being." After the call, I didn't even take my coat off. I sat right back down at the table and opened a blank email. Subject line, "Financial support ending. Please read carefully." My fingers hovered over the keys, then started to fly. I wrote it like a report, not a cry for attention. "For the past 3 years, I have been financially supporting the household in the following ways," I began, then attached my spreadsheet. I listed the mortgage, the 2 car notes, the utilities, the credit card payments, the personal loan bailouts. For each, I included the monthly amount, the approximate total paid, and the date the automatic payment would end. Effective, exact date. I will no longer be responsible for these obligations, I wrote. The accounts are in your names. You will need to contact the companies directly to arrange your own payment plans. I added screenshots of key documents. The refinance agreement with my name as the borrower of record and my parents as occupants. The loan disclosures for the cars. The credit card statements addressed to my mom but paid from my account. Evidence, not emotion. I thought I'd stop there, but if I did, it would just look like a cold ledger. So I added the part they couldn't call a misunderstanding. I took on these responsibilities out of love and fear. Fear of losing Dad, fear of watching you lose the house, fear of being the bad daughter who said no. I never asked for public credit because I assumed private respect would be enough. Hearing myself called broke and a nobody while funding your mortgage and cars makes it clear that respect is not part of this arrangement. I reread that line 3 times. My heart pounded, but it felt honest. Then came the boundary. I will not continue to sacrifice my financial future, my physical health, and my mental well-being to maintain a lifestyle you present as your own hard work. I will also not tolerate being shamed or guilt-tripped for choosing to stop. I knew them. I knew there would be retaliation, so I made that explicit too. Any attempts to manipulate me, to triangulate other family members against me, or to publicly misrepresent this situation will be met with the same thing I am sharing here: facts, documents, and the truth. I debated whether to include extended family in the email. Part of me hated airing anything outside the inner circle. Another part of me knew exactly how this would go if I didn't. My mom crying to my aunt that I abandoned them. My brother painting me as an unstable drama queen. In the end, I left the to field blank and closed the draft. Not because I changed my mind, but because I knew I had just written the match. I wanted to make sure I was strong enough to strike it. I hit save draft, shut the laptop, and finally exhaled. No explosion yet. Just the eerie quiet right before the storm when you realize you're the one about to call in the lightning. The next day, after another grueling shift, I sat in the hospital break room with my cooling coffee and my finger hovering over the send button on my phone. My hands were trembling, but not from lack of sleep this time. From knowing that once I tapped that screen, I could never unsend the truth. I read the email one more time, added my mom's address, my brother's, and deliberately, 3 more: my aunt, my uncle, and my cousin Chloe. The people my mom loved to complain to about her ungrateful daughter would finally see the full picture. I took a breath, exhaled slowly, and tapped send. No confetti, no dramatic thunder, just a whoosh sound, and then silence. For about 3 hours. Then my phone started lighting up. First came the text from my mom. "What is this supposed to be, Lauren?" Then another. "We need to talk right now, answer your phone." A call came in, and I watched her name flash across my screen while I sat in my parked car, keys still in the ignition. I let it go to voicemail. If I picked up now, she'd scream, cry, twist my words, and I'd cave. So instead, I checked my email. My brother had replied all. "You seriously just blasted our private family finances to everyone? What is wrong with you? You're making yourself look crazy. If you had a problem, you should have come to us like an adult instead of staging some dramatic mic drop moment." It was almost funny. I had spent 3 years coming to them quietly, asking them to take over one bill at a time, only to hear, "We're trying," and "You make more money than we do." I'd been an adult. They'd been toddlers with credit cards. I was still staring at his message when a new reply popped in from my aunt. "I had no idea you were paying for all of this, Lauren. Is this true?" I answered her, not them. "Yes. Every line in that email is backed by documents and statements. I can share them with you if you'd like. My aunt responded, "You don't have to. I believe you. I'm so sorry you've been carrying this alone." Another crack in their perfect narrative. My mom finally sent a long email back, 3 paragraphs of anger and guilt-tripping. She said I was humiliating the family, that I owed them because they raised me, that she never asked me to do any of this, conveniently forgetting the late-night sobbing calls about losing the house. Then she wrote the line that would change everything. "If you stop paying, everything will collapse. Is that what you want? To watch your own family be homeless?" I stared at that sentence, the emotional blackmail laid out in black and white. For once, she'd said the quiet part loud. I forwarded her response to myself, saved it, and then replied, "I don't want anyone to be homeless. That's why I gave you 3 weeks' notice before the payments stop. You are adults. You have jobs. You have options. I am not one of them anymore." I ended with, "If you'd like to have an actual conversation about this, I'm open to a calm call this weekend, but I will not respond to yelling, name-calling, or threats." Then I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. If you saw that message from your own mother, telling you she will collapse without your money, would you keep paying, or finally let her face reality? Because I had just chosen reality. Silence didn't last. By the next morning, my mom had switched strategies, from private guilt to public pity. A coworker texted me a screenshot of my mom's Facebook post. "Nothing hurts more than when your own child turns their back on you after everything you've done for them." Some people forget who changed their diapers and fed them growing up. Money changes people. The comments poured in. "Kids these days have no respect. So sorry you're going through this, Brenda." I should have expected it. My mom had always been good at playing the martyr. What she didn't expect was that Chloe would see my email before seeing her post. Chloe commented, "Aunt Brenda, I love you, but this isn't the full story. I think it's better if everyone stays out of this until you and Lauren work it out privately." That alone shifted the tone. Another cousin liked Chloe's comment. Then my aunt messaged me privately. "She's posting about you. I'm sorry. Do you want me to say something?" I told her no. I wasn't going to fight a Facebook war. I had something stronger than a vague "kids these days" rant, the power to stop making payments. 3 days later, it started. My brother texted, "Hey, did the car note not go through? The bank is saying we're past due." I replied calmly, "As I wrote in the email, the auto payments ended yesterday. The account is in your name. You'll need to call them." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. A few hours later. "This is messed up. I can't cover this right now. You know that." I set my phone down, took a deep breath, and didn't answer. The next morning, he wrote again. "They're talking about repossession if we don't catch up. Is this seriously what you want?" I typed and erased 3 different replies before settling on the truth. What I want is to stop being responsible for bills I don't own, for people who call me broke while living off my paycheck. Then I put my phone down and went to work. At the hospital, a patient's monitor beeped, a doctor called my name, and for a few blessed hours, my entire brain belonged to the job. On my lunch break, I checked my email and saw a new message from the mortgage company addressed to my mom and CC'd to me. "Your automatic payment has been canceled at your request. Your next payment is due on." My mom replied to the bank, looping me back in. "This must be a mistake. My daughter takes care of this." I didn't respond there. I called the bank directly, confirmed that everything was set just as I'd arranged, and asked them to note in the account that I would not be resuming payments. When I hung up, my hands were shaking, but this time from something closer to relief. That night, my mom called 10 times in a row. Voicemail after voicemail poured in, crying, yelling, begging, threatening. "I can't believe you're doing this to us. What did we ever do to you? Do you want your father to die worrying about money?" At the end of the last one, her voice dropped to a cold, hard edge. If you let this house go, don't you ever show your face here again. That hurt, more than I wanted to admit. But here's the thing. I hadn't let the house go. I'd given them notice, time, and all the information they needed. It wasn't that they couldn't handle the payments. It was that they didn't want to. They wanted me to keep bleeding quietly. A week later, when the mortgage went unpaid and the late notice hit, my mom finally texted, "Fine, come over this weekend, we'll talk." No apology, no recognition, just a command. Like I was still a kid being called to the principal's office. I almost said no, but a part of me needed to see them confronted with the reality they'd always pushed onto me. So I booked a flight home, this time on points I'd saved, not money I didn't have. The girl they once called broke was about to walk into the house she paid for and watch what happened when the safety net disappeared. When I pulled into the driveway that Saturday, the house looked the same. Trimmed hedges, wreath on the door, "Bless this home" sign still hanging crookedly on the porch. You'd never guess there was a past due notice sitting on the kitchen counter. My mom opened the door before I could knock. Her eyes were red from crying, but her jaw was set. My brother leaned against the hallway wall, arms folded, wearing that same smirk from the dinner, but this time there was panic behind it. We sat at the dining table, the same place she'd called me broke. No food, no small talk. Just a stack of papers in the middle. The printed version of my email, the late notice from the bank, and a yellow legal pad with numbers scribbled across it. "So," my mom started, voice brittle, "you've made your point." That sentence told me everything I needed to know. In her mind, this was a tantrum I'd thrown, not a boundary I'd set. "This isn't about making a point," I said calmly. "It's about making a change. I can't keep doing this." My brother jumped in. "You're acting like we're just sitting around doing nothing. We work. We're trying. You could have eased us into this instead of ripping the rug out from under us." I gestured toward the papers. 3 weeks' notice is not ripping the rug out. 3 years of me paying everything while being told I'm a nobody. That was the rug. This is me stepping off it. My mom's eyes flashed. "You think you're better than us now because you have a degree and a job in the city? We gave you everything. We sacrificed for you." I felt the familiar sting of guilt rise up, but I didn't let it take over this time. "You gave me food and shelter because that's what parents do. I'm grateful for that. But that doesn't mean I owe you my entire adulthood in return." I slid a folder across the table. Inside were 2 things: a simple budget I'd printed from an online template, and a list of financial counseling services in their town. "Here's the deal," I said. "The bank gave you the option to refinance without me. It's in that letter. You can downsize, you can sell the cars, you can cut the extras. You have options. What you don't have anymore is me as your silent bank." My brother scoffed. "So that's it? After everything, you're just walking away?" "No," I said quietly. "I'm finally walking toward my own life." The room went quiet. My mom's eyes filled with tears, but they were angry tears, not remorseful ones. "How can you be so cold?" she whispered. "You want us to suffer." "I don't want you to suffer," I answered. "I want you to grow up." I knew that was the line that would cut. It did. She slammed her hand on the table. "Get out." For a second, my old self tried to surface, the one who would have apologized, begged, promised to cover. Just 1 more month. Instead, I stood up. "Before I leave, I want to say one thing," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "You called me broke in this house. You laughed at me. You made me feel small. But the truth is, you were terrified of what would happen if I ever realized my worth. This," I gestured around the room, "is what happens when I stop pretending you're right about me." I turned to my brother. "You once told me I'd always be a nobody. But if I'm such a nobody, why does everything fall apart the second I stop paying?" He looked away. No smirk now, just tight lips and tapping fingers. If you ever want to have a relationship with me that isn't built on money and manipulation, I added, my door is open. But it will not look like this. Then I walked out of my own house like a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. Standing on the porch, I felt strangely light. Scared, yes. Sad, absolutely. But under all of that was something new. Respect for myself. If your family told you to get out of a house you paid for, would you crumble? Or finally believe you deserve better? 3 months later, I stood in a different doorway, holding keys that finally opened something with only my name on it. It wasn't a big place, just a small condo on the edge of the city with scuffed floors and outdated cabinets. But it was mine. No hidden second family attached. No secret auto payments. My credit score had already started to climb as the debt tied to my parents' life stopped draining me. I'd redirected the money I used to send them into a savings account and a retirement plan. For the first time, my future wasn't an afterthought. The fallout back home had been brutal. My aunt kept me updated in small, careful doses. My parents tried to refinance without my income and were denied. They listed the house, and when it finally sold, they had to downsize into a small rental apartment, about the size of my old place. My brother sold one of the cars and picked up night shifts at a warehouse to cover his other bills. There were angry texts in the beginning, blaming me for everything. We had to move because of you. You ruined our lives. I didn't respond to those. Then, slowly, the tone started to change. One day, a simple message from my brother. I got another job. It sucks, but I'm paying my own way now. Weeks later, from my mom. We're settling in. It's different. No apology yet, but no more posts about ungrateful children either. One night, after a long shift, I sat on my new couch, scrolling on my phone, and stumbled into a thread about financial abuse. Person after person wrote about paying their parents' bills, being called ungrateful, being guilt-tripped into staying broke so their family could flex. My chest tightened. For the first time, I put my own story into words, not naming names, not exposing identities, just describing what it felt like to be mocked by people whose lives you quietly funded. The responses were overwhelming. This is my life. I thought I was the only one. Your sentence about the only reason they can afford to look down on you is you just punched me in the chest. That's when I realized the email that blew up my family didn't just change my bank accounts. It changed how I showed up in the world. I stopped apologizing for having boundaries. I stopped equating love with sacrifice. And I started asking myself a question nobody in my family had ever asked me. What do you want? I wanted time, so I dropped one extra monthly shift. I wanted growth, so I signed up for an online class in nurse leadership, something I'd always told myself I didn't have time or money for. I wanted peace. So I stayed no contact with my parents for a while, letting the noise settle. Months later, my phone buzzed with a number I knew by heart but hadn't seen in a long time. My mom. I stared at the screen, feeling my heart slam against my ribs. This time, I picked up. Her voice was smaller than I remembered. Hi, she said. I saw that thing you wrote online, about families and money. Was that about us? I didn't lie. Yeah, I said quietly. It was. There was a long pause. I didn't realize how much we were asking of you, she finally admitted. I was so scared of losing everything that I made you responsible for my fear. And then I punished you for it. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was the first time she'd ever taken any responsibility. I'm not calling to ask for money, she added quickly. I know that's over. I miss my daughter. Tears burned my eyes. I miss my mom too, I said, but the version of her that loved me more than she loved what I could pay for. We agreed to try something new. Conversations that didn't end in, "Can you cover this?" Calls where I wasn't treated like a walking debit card. We're still figuring it out. Some days it feels possible. Some days, old habits slip in, and I have to remind her, and myself of the boundary. And that's the real revenge, I think. Not watching them struggle or move into a smaller place. Not the cars being sold or the vacations disappearing. The real revenge is reclaiming my life and forcing them to confront the truth. I was never the broke one. I was the one keeping everything from breaking. If you're watching this and you're the responsible one in your family, the one they call when a bill is late, when a car breaks down, when a bad decision finally comes due, ask yourself, are you helping or are you being used? Are you saving them or are you sacrificing yourself? And if your own mother mocked you for being a nobody while living in a house you paid for, what would you do? Would you keep the peace and keep paying, or would you send the email that finally sets you free? Tell me honestly, if you were in my place, what would you have done differently? And at what point would you have walked away? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to see how many of us are done being broke nobodies in families that can't survive without us. Thank you for listening. From my perspective, Lauren isn't cold or selfish at all. She's someone who finally realized her worth after years of being emotionally and financially drained. It takes a lot of courage to stop confusing love with sacrifice and to choose education, self-respect, and a healthier future instead of constant guilt. If you were in Lauren's place, would you keep paying for your family's lifestyle, or would you cut them off and start rebuilding your own life? And why?